I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to not only inform you about the law and give you a recap of where we stand today, but also to walk you through the step-by-step process that you need to employ after April 1st, when your employees potentially, most likely, will begin to request these leaves. Hey there, my love. Welcome back to my channel and CPTV, the place where aspiring and growing entrepreneurs can turn their passions into businesses and their businesses into long-term freedom. If you like the way that sounds, then you are in the right place, because every Tuesday and every Friday, I am dropping golden nuggets and giving you the actionable steps, tips, tools, and strategies to help you take your business dreams or current realities to that next level. I am CP, and welcome. I am so excited to have you here. And today we are talking about the coronavirus. Again, I know I am overhearing everything about it, talking about it, and actually being quarantined about it. But stuff keeps coming in, rolling in day by day, second by second. And I really could not, in due justice, ignore the topic that we are really going to be diving into today. And that topic is the coronavirus, Family First Coronavirus Act, that we've already talked about. And we have a video that we will link to. It's up here somewhere for you to go out and take a look at. And that was when the bill was first introduced. So let's make sure that I give you a little bit of a recap. And beside that recap, I'm also going to today really dive deep and focus on giving you the step-by-step process so that you are prepared as a small business owner for April 1st, when this actual leave becomes effective and you automatically have to begin implementing. So the Emergency Family Medical Leave Act, that is a part of the Family First Coronavirus Act. And just to recap what that is, it's emergency family medical leave. And actually, it does apply, unlike our currently standing Family Medical Leave Act, it applies to all employers with less than 500 employees. So that's one all the way up to 499. And ultimately, what it does is it allows for employees of these size employers to apply for emergency family medical leave due to coronavirus complications, specifically as it relates to people missing work because they have to stay home to care for a child under the age of 18 due to a school closure related to the coronavirus. Now, this family medical leave, or this emergency family medical leave, is very different than our regular one that we've all known. Number one, not just because it focuses on employers that are definitely all the way down to one employee, which the original one does not, but because it also provides after the first 10 days for paid medical leave. So I want to make sure that we recap that because it does involve paid medical leave. The reason is very specific, though. You have to be home taking care of a child under the age of 18 who can't go to school because of the coronavirus. It does still allow for the full 12 weeks, but it applies to full-time and part-time employees, anyone who's worked for you for longer than 30 days. So I want to make sure that you recap what that particular piece of the Family First Coronavirus Act is. The second piece of the act really pertains to the paid leave portion, and that's emergency paid sick leave. Now, both of these are actually going to take effect beginning April 1st. And a part of the reason why we're addressing it now and didn't address it sooner is because we were really waiting on the Department of Labor and their guidance. In the act, even though it was passed on March 14th, a Saturday, by the House, the 18th by the Senate, and then later on the 18th at night was signed into law by our president. It was still kind of up there because it allowed for some wiggle room for the Department of Labor to come in and actually allow for some exclusions. And we just received that Department of Labor stamp of authorization about 24 to 36 hours ago. And that stamp basically changed nothing. The Department of Labor is taking the Family First Coronavirus Act and holding it just as it is. So there aren't any exceptions. We were thinking that maybe smaller employers under 50 employees wouldn't be subject to it, and those might be some exceptions that the DOL puts out there. But ultimately, they stood fast, and the law still applies to all groups. So that means that we need to get prepared. So going back and talking about what that emergency paid sick leave, it requires you as an employer, if you have less than 500 employees, to actually provide all of your employees, full-time or part-time, with 80 hours of paid sick leave should they request it. Now, those 80 hours, and that request has to be based off of a coronavirus related illness for themselves, meaning that they've been diagnosed, or it actually applies to state or government orders of mandatory quarantine, which most of our states are in at this time. Some of us may not be, but some of us are in. The federal government hasn't come out with a mandatory quarantine yet. And that's because a lot of states are actually stepping up and doing it themselves. So there's really no need to, but it does apply to those. It applies to if you are diagnosed with COVID-19 and you've got to stay home. It applies if you are afraid of a COVID-19, if you're in quarantine because of a exposure to it, if you have to care for a child or a spouse or a family member, or even a neighbor in this instance. So in essence, anyone who requests an emergency paid sick leave should be granted by that employer 80 hours of paid sick leave in order to be able to take that time off. So what does that really mean for all of you out there? So for more information and details on exactly what the Family First Coronavirus Act is, I want you to make sure you check out our 2 other videos that we've already done on the topic, and they're somewhere around here. One is our masterclass that we did when we actually had a guest attorney from Fisher Phillips, a partner, Jasmine Stover, who really was on with a lot of our clients and a lot of other small businesses who were very, very scared, had tons of questions, and we addressed the details of those acts in that video, as well as my initial video that's entitled Coming Up with Your New Coronavirus HR Plan. We really do dive deep into the specifics of it. So make sure you check those out for the details. I really want to jump into right now how to prepare and how to implement these things. So step number 1, now that we know the DOL has come out and not made any specific exclusions surrounding this act, that you have to provide notice and post that notice in some place that is available for employees to see. That's the first step. So if you need a copy of that notice, make sure that you go ahead and download that from your COVID-19 toolkit. It is available on our COVID-19 toolkit site for those of you who actually have it. And that notice needs to be downloaded and posted or provided to your employees beginning April 1st. That's designed to let them know that it's effective, it's active, it's very specific what the notice looks like, and it tells all of the employees what they're eligible for, what they can apply for, and ultimately what they can come to you as an employer for and request leave for. So with that notice being posted, obviously you're probably going to have a lot more requests because we just, in our state, issued a statement basically saying that we have not reached the peak of these diagnoses yet. They're expecting the numbers to go much, much higher. So the likelihood that you'll have more employees requesting that paid mandatory sick leave increases, and we want to make sure that you're available. So that's your first step. Post that notice. Step number 2 specifically relates to emergency family medical leave. Now, a lot of employers and a lot of you out there who are less than 50 employees have never had to deal with family medical leave and what the administration or process looks like. So this is going to be kind of your introductory lesson to FMLA. There is a standard process to FMLA. And in this emergency FMLA process, you are being encouraged to follow that standard process, which includes those forms, the request form, the tracking process, the administration of it. The one thing that you will not need that's a part of the regular family medical leave is that doctor's verification section. Obviously, the emergency family medical leave doesn't have a doctor's verification section because you're missing work due to the fact that your children aren't in school. So in essence, I'm telling you, just to make sure that you gather the initial request form from your employee, that you provide them with that notice that we've already talked about, and that ultimately once you receive it, you are going to have to grant it. I mean, you're not really going to have the opportunity to make sure that it's verifiable or that they're eligible. There are a couple of eligibility rules that you're going to want to look at. And again, I want you to refer to those other videos to get those details. But I really do encourage you to follow the basic Family Medical Leave Act process. If you have any questions about that or need any more detailed information about what that family medical leave, regular family medical leave process looks like, please let us know. Feel free, email us at helpdesk@Big HR Hero Support. we'd be happy to help you out. But ultimately, you're going to want to follow that same process minus the doctor verification necessity. Now, step 3 is directly related to that emergency paid sick leave process. And there really are going to be 3 steps that I want you to follow when someone comes to you for emergency paid sick leave. And they're really simple 3 steps. The first step is to collect a formal written request. I do not advise that you allow an employee to call you or text you or email you or walk into your office if you are still open and just say, I'm going to need to take some sick time, right? You wouldn't do that if they were requesting normal PTO that they have available to them. And I don't recommend that you do it now. I still recommend that you either follow your current process that you have internally when an employee requests PTO, whether it's an electronic request, whether they have to submit it through a system, or whether or not you have some type of paper form for them to complete and make that request. But if you don't already have that process, then you are going to want them to go through a formalized written request. And we do have a template of that formalized written request available for you in your COVID-19 toolkit. So make sure that you download that, and then you can ultimately customize it for your business, slap on your logo, and make any necessary adjustments that you want to it. But it does, that basic template, include all the information that you're going to want to receive from the employee and request it. It also includes a section where you as the employer are approving it. And in that, you want to make sure that you are telling them, based upon your request, that 80 hours, and you're not really going to be able to verify, you're not really going to be able to deny, so it just is what it is. But if you approve it, you want to make sure that they have a clear understanding of when their return to work date is. So if I'm giving you 80 hours and you're a full-time employee and you typically work 40 hours a week and I'm requesting it today, then 2 weeks from now would be my return to work date. You get where I'm going with that? If you're a part-time employee and you are paying them based off of the average, and let's say their average number of hours per week is 20 hours and you can give them up to 80, then that means that their return to work date would be 4 weeks from now. So you want to make sure that you include the expected return to work date on that form. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the employee is going to return to work or that we are all going to be able to return to work, but it could mean that when they come back to work or when they're supposed to come back, that they will be in a remote work from home status. Or if they need additional time, then it lets them know that they are going to have to go through the process of either applying for emergency family medical leave, regular medical leave, or additional sick leave if they've got PTO time available, or they're just requesting time off without pay. So those are some of the options, but you want to make sure that you clearly state this is when this paid medical leave, emergency paid medical leave is going to end. Make sure you document that. And then that third piece in that is once you receive that written request, in essence, you've got to approve it. You've got to say yes. You really don't have the ability to say no. And you want to make sure, again, that you document that return to work. Now, a lot of questions have come up for us surrounding when someone returns to work, should you require doctor verification? And we've received new language from the Department of Labor and EEO and CDC and the Department of Labor, I said that already, that says do not require a doctor's notice. Now, a big part of the reason for that is because our system is already overloaded with the remnants and the consequences of this pandemic that we're all facing right now, which is absolutely ridiculous. And they don't want to overcrowd the system any further with a bunch of folks coming in and requesting doctor's notes or additional COVID-19 tests or whatever it might be, just because they ultimately need to get back to work. So in essence, they're saying don't require that verification when people come back to work. So you don't even need that. But you do need to begin to prepare yourself for any conversation that you will need to have as you get to the end of that 80-hour period, because there could be other circumstances that have come up for that employee. They may have been since diagnosed. They may have some additional needs for time off. So you just want to make sure that you and the employee have open lines of communication. And finally, I want to provide you with some general tips and tools surrounding the implementation of both of these things. What I just went over with you were not crazy hard steps. But if you're unfamiliar with any of that, you don't have any of those processes in place, please make sure that you reach out to your HR support team with Big HR Hero and with our company, because we will be happy to help navigate and walk you through it. Also, make sure that you take a look at our other videos. They are very, very detailed. They're very, very step by step, and they provide you with all of the the detailed information that you need. In your COVID-19 toolkit, we have an alert section and an amazing resource section that will really dive deep into all of these, plus all the forms, all of the processes, all of the templates that you need in order to be able to implement these things easily are available to you in that toolkit. So make sure that you access them. You also want to make sure that in all of these situations, you are documenting everything. And that documentation is critical. So again, don't allow it to be a verbal request and a verbal approval. Don't allow it to be a text message request or a text message approval. Please make sure that if your employees are coming to you and they're requesting these very special forms of time off, that you are documenting those requests and that you are aware of when those expected return to work dates are, and that that employee is aware as well. And most importantly, keep the lines of communication open. Things are changing extremely rapidly. They are happening day in and day out. They're creating a lot of stress for people. And you want to make sure that you communicate clearly to any employees that are on these special types of leave. Hey, if something else comes up prior to your return, please reach out. We can figure out a game plan. I think that the questions that we're even receiving from employees is, I'm afraid to request time off. I'm scared. I don't know what that means. I don't want to lose my job. So please make sure you're communicating, because it is definitely putting a damper on your organizational culture, the anxiety levels and the stress levels of your employees, and ultimately all the questions that they have. If they are not answered in advance or proactively, all they're going to end up being is fires for you to put out on the back end. So that's it, guys. I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to not only inform you about the law and give you a recap of where we stand today, but also to walk you through the step-by-step process that you need to employ after April 1st, which is next Wednesday, when your employees potentially, most likely, will begin to request these leaves. And make sure that you post that notice. If it's not posted, there are tons of fines that you can be subject to, tons of consequences. So don't take this lightly. Do what you got to do. Document everything. Make sure your employees are aware. And again, we will get through this together as a world, and we will be better. We'll be back. So have a wonderful day. Again, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Mwah.